All right, everyone, let's do this. How are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. Now, before we get into who we're talking to today, don't forget to check out our friends over at ToneShopGuitars.com. Use the code BREAKFAST15 and receive 15% off your first online order. Tell them that Lisa and I sent you, and they're going to throw in a free shirt with that order. Pretty good deal, huh? Let's not forget them. Now, on the show today, we talk with Timothy Stevens. Timothy is a writer, producer, director. He's also the co-founder of Spectrograph Films. They have a new movie premiering at the Dallas International Film Festival this weekend called Dark Sanctuary, The Story of the Church. Now, what is the Church? The Church is the longest-running goth club in the United States, and it was housed at 2424 Swiss Avenue right there in the heart of cowboy land, Dallas, Texas. The documentary, it profiles the DJs, the bands, and the people who made the church so special, Timothy included. Now, when it closed in 2020, he felt someone should document that. So he talked to the owner, he talked to the DJ, the patrons. He even told his own story of being accepted into that community, where everyone was accepted. What I've seen of the film, it looks amazing, and it brought back a lot of memories. Once again, it premieres this weekend at the Dallas International Film Festival. After that, we're hoping it'll get accepted into other film festivals and go on a streaming platform of some sort so everyone can see it. Anyway, it was a lot of fun getting to know Timothy. It was a lot of fun talking to him and taking this trip down memory lane. Let's check it out. Tell everyone who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Timothy Stevens. I'm the co-founder of Spectrograph Films and the director of Dark Sanctuary, The Story of the Church, which of course is a documentary about the world famous Lizard Lounge, but more specifically on Sunday nights, it was a goth club. It is still a goth club known as the Church, and it's moved, and a large part of the story is about the 2424 Swiss Avenue location, which is very historic and has seen many things over its, probably 140-year lifespan. I think it was built in like 1880. But yeah, I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm originally from Amarillo.
Okay.
But so I'm a Texan, but I came to DFW for college. And then, really actually one of the first places I went to in DFW was the Church. And I didn't know much about it. I just, there was a concert. I wanted to go see a concert. They did a lot of shows at that point. And, and I wandered into this incredible space that, little did I know was going to become a major part of my life, over the course of my film career. And now, of course, making the documentary, it's, become a huge part of my life.
Yeah. And what was the vibe like when you walked in that first time,
Man, it's incredible. There are not many clubs like this. I know every city has their club, and it's legendary and in its own right. But there's something about the 2424 Swiss location. It used to be it's been a lot of things. When it was built, there's kind of a blank space, like the 1880s. Not really sure. At one point, it was a trolley car repair station, and then it became a furniture store in like the 50s. And then after that, in the 70s, it became the Grand Crystal Palace, which was a dinner theater. And this is when they brought in this huge baccarat chandelier, which you can actually see behind me, right there. Kind of became the icon of that building. And they really dressed up the place, and they built a stage and a mezzanine, and really turned it into this theater look. But despite its like 70s kitsch, it kind of had this gothic overtone. So by the time I went there, it really had, like the interior was mostly black, red velvet, chandeliers. It felt as I don't know if maybe your viewers are familiar with Aurelio Voltaire, Gothic kind of like kitsch folk artist. He does a lot of comedy stuff. He wrote the theme song for Billy and Mandy. the network Cartoon Network TV show. We interviewed him because it was one of his favorite haunts, and played probably more shows there than just about anywhere else. He said it was kind of like walking in to a ball for vampires. It felt like the club in the Matrix, or the beginning of The Hunger, right?
Yeah.
It just had this really grandiose aura to it. And at the time, I think I was seeing a Cramps cover band called the Gorehounds. And but what I found out was, I met several people that night. They were like, well, this is a dance club. Normally, there's concerts here. I think it was probably a Thursday night. But they were like, you need to come back on Sunday. And it took a while before I did. And when I did come, I'll tell you, as a small town Texan, it transformed my world. Because, I kind of considered myself goth, and, I had those friends and I was part of that scene. But, Amarillo had nothing on like what Dallas was doing.
Yeah.
They were on the forefront, and still are in a lot of ways on the forefront of like gothic industrial club culture. So yeah, it was transformative, and it became, this just dynamic influence in my life.
Yeah. Well, I remember I'm from Corsicana, which is just south of Dallas.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
when
I've
I
been
moved
there.
to
I
when
filmed
I
some
moved
movies there, actually.
oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well,
With some other people, but yeah, that's a big filming location, actually.
yeah, they
Yeah.
filmed a couple of films there. Um when I started going down to Deep Ellum, like the Lizard Lounge was considered part of Deep Ellum, but it was kind of on the outskirts.
A little bit, yeah, yeah.
So I kind of hung out on the main street, Elm Street, Commerce area. So the
Right.
first time someone invited me to the Lizard Lounge, it was like walked, and back then it was very shady to walk that area. Now it's I don't know. I haven't been down there in a while, but
It's kind of gotten shady again,
oh, has
honestly.
it?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but I
I mean,
remember
yeah,
going into the Lizard Lounge, and the same thing. They said on Sundays this becomes a goth club, and so I made it a point to go back. I wasn't a goth kid, but I made it a point to go back and was just blown away by how different it was. The same venue,
oh yeah,
you walk through the same doors, and it was just completely different vibe, and everybody was so cool, so welcoming. But you just walked in. I it's what I'm about to say is going to sound douchey. I tour for a lot, and the first time I went to Prague, uh, they told me go out at night because it's a completely different city at night,
sure,
and
yeah,
because the
yeah.
city's beautiful, and that the only thing that's ever reminded me of that was that going into the church after going to the Lizard.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, they both had their energy,
Uh-huh.
the Lizard Lounge, which we cover in the film.
Yeah.
We spend like maybe 10-15 minutes talking about the lounge, because you can't really talk about the Lizard Lounge. You can't talk about the church without talking about the
Yeah.
lounge, obviously. But yeah, what they would do, the biggest change they did, and it was different early on. So first time I came was like 2010. And so
Okay.
it changed a lot. Originally what they would do, they would switch out all the light bulbs for red bulbs. And
Mhm.
so red really became like the color of the church. And they brought in, at one point very early on, they brought in this huge statue that, and you'll see it in the film. It was probably 20 feet tall, and they assembled it on this huge like metal rod, and they were like foam pieces that stacked. And it looked like this monk supporting this huge crossbeam. It was very intimidating. They would put it center stage, and then they would backlight the, because there's this stained glass window that again kind of became like part of the icon of the church. Big gothic stained glass window, and it's never open to the outside. There's just lights behind it. And when they took over, they put lights that you could change the colors on, and they would backlight that statue in red, and it was just intimidating as hell. And we found one of the only photographs of that statue. It kind of existed in people's memories. They're like, did that actually happen? I don't know. I remember that thing. And then we found a picture of it, and it they would just they brought some like sarcophagi into the there's a little side room called either the video bar or the 80s room, where they did more like 80s retro, and a smaller DJ booth. And they put sarcophagi on either side of that DJ booth to just create this different, like kind of Anne Rice vampire interview with the vampire type look. But yeah, it was, to me, there was, I didn't realize, I think, when I was going there, how significant the church and the lounge really are. And there's lots of clubs, and I'm going to go out on a limb here that I think, and this was the reason we decided to make the film, is that the Lizard Lounge and the church, especially, I think, stand in the ranks of like Studio 54 and the Start Club, which of course is a Dallas club as well. But both of those clubs lasted 4 years, something like that. I forget how long Studio 54 is around, but like 5 or 6, like very short lifespan. The Lizard Lounge and the church existed in a single location for 28 years. And it was the same scene, and it evolved, and it became, it moved with the times, but that's something. And it hosted the biggest names in EDM. Paul Oakenfold, we interviewed him. Tiesto, Diplo, Moby played some of the most iconic concerts he ever did at 2424 Swiss. And then on the Gothic industrial side, you've got every name imaginable, from Skinny Puppy to Combi Christ to The Cure hung out there. Trent Reznor walked in one time. Manson showed his face, I think, more than once. And so you start looking at that, and you just realize that this is a place that is influencing the broader scene. There's you can go to goth clubs in Europe, and if you find some old school goth head, more than likely they've at least heard rumors of the church.
Yeah.
And because there's that shock value too. That was the other thing that made us want to do this film, is like, Dallas, Texas, like that doesn't make any sense. Right? We can get into the other aspects of the film later, if you'd like, but I think the most important thing is what it did for the community, because this community started to form around the church. And these were people, especially in the 90s, that were outsiders, people that were goth, new wavers, punks, gay, trans, anything in between, that just had no acceptance in their daily life, could come to the church, and just open arms, no questions asked. And it became a lifeline for hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And I think that was those two things really are what catapulted me into saying, like, okay, someone's got to document this.
Yeah.
And well, I guess it's going to be me. So I'm gonna do it. And it was a huge task.
Yeah.
But 2.5 years of putting this film together.
So once you started, once you came up with the idea, or you said someone's got to document it, how did you find the support of the people you contacted who were involved with the church, who were involved with Lizard Lounge? Were they very supportive, or were they like,
thankfully, I was not a stranger in that community. I had premiered 2 short films there at the church. I cast several of the people that are part of the church community into a couple of short films that I made. But I also, my co-producer for the film, his name is Austin Hayes. He's really what I would call like a goth insider, right? Like, he's a musician. He does gothic industrial, dark electronica. He's friends with a lot of the artists that we ended up interviewing. And so he was the original person that came up to me and said, like, listen, I don't know if you do documentaries, because I've mostly done narrative stuff up to this point. He was like, but someone's got to do this. And it was really working with him that, and eventually going to Don Nedler, the owner of the club, and saying, like, hey, I know, like, the two of us has probably only spoken to you a handful of times. He's a rather intimidating guy. But would you trust us to tell this story? And he went out on a limb, like, I don't I don't think he knew necessarily that we could do it justice, and it was a big leap of faith, I think. And I hope, I do think that we served him well in this, because in a large part it is Don's story
Yeah.
as well, and because he's the person that drove this thing forward. And yeah, I don't think he set out to create this really transformational community that I almost liken to an actual church. I think he was just trying to run a successful club. But his mentality and his philosophy, I think, seeped down and created this space which that could flourish.
Yeah. How hard was it to find footage? Photographs somewhat easy, but like all the video footage you have for it.
Oh man, so hard. That's why it took 2.5 years. We did. I had this naive idea when we first talked to Don. I was like, okay, great. We're going to start with Don, and then we'll start with Joe Virus, who was the resident DJ for the most of the time that
Mhm.
the church was at the Swiss Avenue location. And I was like, we'll interview those two people, and we'll get recommendations from them, and we'll kind of like spiderweb our interviews out from there. We'll be done in 6 months. No big deal. I had a goal of like, we're going to start and be done before the end of like 2021. And that like absolutely did not happen. Because not only did I find out that there was like way more to the story than I was initially aware, but I also realized that, really before like I would say almost like 2011, 2012, they didn't really allow cameras into that building very much. And certainly 2000 and back, it was like straight up, like, get that out of here. And people weren't thinking about it. Like, we didn't have cell phones, with cameras. So no one's like documenting their lives. They're living in the moment. And so we spent a better part of a year just talking to people, mostly through Facebook Messenger, because that's kind of that generation is mostly on Facebook. So I put calls out to the Aether and said, who has photographs? Who has video? Please share. And we uncovered these incredible gems that are, in my mind, like just super iconic. Like this is actually a film photograph here that, you just look at these people. I'm happy to share the trailer with you that you can cut in some stuff if you would like. But it's just this iconic representation of goth in the early to mid 90s, and in a place and time. And it was, I kind of felt like Dan Brown or something, right? Like or what's the character from the Da Vinci Code, who's like digging through crypts and finding these ancient treasures. And that's what it felt like. I talked to Jeff K, who was a KNON DJ, still is, in a big part of the Lizard Lounge in the church. And I went to his house. He pulled out a box and said, "Oh no, just look through this stuff, see what you can find." And I found a photograph that his wife had taken during a sound check for Clan of Zymox in 1988 at 2424 Swiss. And at the time, it was called the Empire Club. And I turned to him and I was like, "Dude, do you know that you probably have the oldest photograph of the interior of this place?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that photograph. Wow." And so we scanned this stuff, and I always try to return those scanned photographs to the people I get them from as well, so that they have digital copies as well. But yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of my favorite part of the whole process is uncovering all that stuff and getting the archival material. Because without it, it would just be a bunch of people reminiscing. And that's not really a movie. That's like a podcast, I think. And maybe if I hadn't have found that material, it might have turned into a podcast or something, because I think the film could not have been made unless we found those photographs and video clips.
Have you ever thought about doing something like that to go hand in hand with this?
It's a good idea. I don't really have the time right now, but we filmed about 150 to 200 hours of footage that made it into a 90-minute feature film, right? So a lot of that is B-roll footage. So that's like just footage of people dancing and stuff like that. We filmed a lot of It'll Do, which is where the church is transplanted currently. But a lot of that is interviews. Joe Virus talked for almost 9 hours. We had to go 2 separate days with Joe, and because he just had all
Were you
these.
anticipating him talking that long?
No, not at all. But it was also good, man. And there's stuff that we just couldn't include. It's just that we didn't know where to put it. He kind of becomes the hero of the film in a way. Like I think a good documentary finds a protagonist.
Yeah.
And we really found a protagonist in Joe in his journey from becoming, a member of the scene to rising to his position as a resident DJ to, he kind of becomes like the avatar for us to view the experience of that community and also the loss of 2424 Swiss, because that's ultimately where things went in 2020 with the pandemic and the shuttering of the club. And and I think a lot of people felt that really hard, like the death of a relative, like the death of a friend, and Joe certainly did. It was very hard for him.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that when it did close. It was a lot of places shuttered during that time. But there were some places when, like the church, like Lizard Lounge, that you heard about, and you're like, like that's, how can that be?
Yeah, man. And like if it could have held on for like 2 more months, they started letting bars open up again, and but they just couldn't do it. Don Nedler paid rent on that place, shuttered, and his entire staff for months out of his own pocket, and it just became unsustainable. But yeah, I mean, many people we have several interviews in the film of people just saying like, how could this happen? How could a place like that close? It felt like something immutable. It's this thing that it's always been there. It's going to be there forever. And that and it was the most really it was a place that held some of the most important memories for people's lives, and to see that place go just feels like it can feel like your past being obliterated in a way.
Yeah. Well, during that time, also, the one I remember the most was the Troubadour, who put out a call for help and started a GoFundMe to keep it open. Was that ever a thought, with Don?
It's just, man, like, I think it was costing, like $30,000 a month
To keep it open.
to keep it open, and so just do the math, like they, it would have, I don't see how that's possible. They could have kept it empty and just blew everybody's cash for a month, maybe. Like,
and then it still would have ultimately.
So it's it was just a bad situation. But the unfortunate thing though is that we address this a bit in the film is. There's a major issue right now, the commercialization of Deep Ellum. And these, some of them, like literally foreign, property companies coming in and buying up property, big property companies here in DFW buying up stuff and flipping these local businesses into flipping these local businesses into brand new apartments. Or, the big thing was like the Epic project, which was Uber. Coming in, and all of that has driven the price of property and also thus the rent there just to unsustainable levels. Probably when you were in Deep Ellum, that was like the golden era of that neighborhood.
Early to not late 90s, but
I mean that's when you just that's when Trees was having its, most iconic concerts, and
Trees, Club Clearview, the Art Bar, Curtain Club, Galaxy Club,
just incredible places, right? And most of those places are gone now,
Yeah.
We have a few of them left. And and those are hanging on by the skin of their teeth just because of what's happening in that neighborhood. And it's unfortunate. Maybe it's inevitable, but it's killing the most it's killing the personality of Dallas. It's making us artists struggle to put our art out.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, it's just it's unfortunately it's the biggest towers I think fall hardest. And so when an iconic club like that comes to an end, it's felt majorly.
Yeah. You said earlier, like you said, you've helped make a couple of movies down in Corsicana. You've worked in like editing, camera operation. Did
literally everything, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. The worst and the best jobs, I think.
What do you prefer?
The goal is to write, direct, produce. And on lower budgets like this, we raised a significant amount of money for this. We did an Indiegogo campaign. It raised about 30,000, which is it's the biggest budget I've ever raised. And it's still chump change compared to most films, right? So it's enough to really make the end product look good, but not enough to like pay myself for my time. So I would prefer to write, produce, direct in the interest of spending everyone's money wisely. I do everything mostly. I had some great help with this film. Xander Wagner edited the film, and he also shot a significant amount of it. I edited probably the first 4 or 5 rough cuts of the film before I passed it off to him, because that's just kind of how I work. And then I shot quite a lot of it as well. So I like it all. It's all fun. The goal, of course, would be to because I'm not the best at everything, right? I love working with people that are way better at me. Operating camera or doing lights or doing sound or even editors, like Xander, he had never edited a feature documentary before. I gave him some pointers, and then he spent like a week going through that 150 hours of footage, and then just like a freaking magician, just started editing like a documentary pro, So hats off to Xander, because I would argue that he eclipsed my like editing talents immediately, and that was like, wow, okay, because he came in with without all the drudgery of that, having seen and heard everything. He came out of that with a fresh perspective. It was able to just kind of go take the right things and put them in the right place. That's important, having outside perspective, because when you are the writer, producer, director, editor, shooter, you start to like fixate on like unimportant things.
And are you very open to handing off the reins if there's something you feel like, I can't do this? It's almost like
totally,
you want to put a fresh set of eyes or a fresh set of
ears. And it was on Dark Sanctuary in particular, that was really important. Because there's so much material, and I'm more of an insider on the community than Xander is. He had been to the church some, but having someone that could just come in and because in the end we want to make something that everyone is interested in, right? We made this for the church community. We made this for the Lizard Lounge community. But we also made it to be seen by everybody. And my hope is that, if you're living in Duluth, Minnesota, and you've heard of Dallas, and all you think of is like the Dallas Cowboys and like cowboys and oil tycoons,
Kennedy.
Yeah, Kennedy. That's Kennedy killers. That's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. If that's all you know about Dallas and you hear this, you'll just go, holy shit, like I had no idea. And then that person's engaged because they know nothing about this. So I think that was and I think we did that, certainly. it's just so fascinating, the things that you have no idea came out of the city.
Yeah. And it's cats like you, who witnessed it. Like, Dallas does have an amazing goth scene, and they had this amazing venue. A lot of people don't know that Dallas had an amazing punk scene in the 70s.
Well, there's a new documentary coming out about that. I know the person working on it, and I can't really say anything because it's still like coming together. But there is a Dallas punk documentary getting made, and that was significant in the 70s. Like, Dallas was, I want to say one of the first. Don't quote me on this, but one of the very first stateside Ramones concerts happened in Dallas. And I think it was the Longhorn. I think it was the Longhorn Ballroom. Yeah. But anyway, all that aside,
Ramones are the Sex Pistols.
Sex Pistols. Yes, you're right. Sex Pistols. There's actually, I think, a recording of that's pretty wild.
Yeah. The
yeah. And then, but then, like, you want to talk about Deep Ellum, in the 40s, blues. You had Blind Lemon, Blind Willie Johnson, oh crap, Robert Johnson, who literally recorded Hellhound on My Trail in Dallas.
Yeah.
We actually grabbed a shot of that because we talked very briefly in the film about the blues, influence.
Yeah.
In Deep Ellum as a center for music, and we grabbed a shot of that. I think now it's like a community space where he recorded. And you get vibes walking by that place, man. Yeah. Like, you're like, Robert Johnson was here. Like, the man who sold his soul to the devil, was here. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I love this, man. I love that you made this documentary. You and your all your team made this documentary, because it does shine a spotlight on Dallas. Whenever I travel and I say I'm from Dallas, that's what you hear. Oh, the Cowboys. Are you a Cowboys fan? No, I don't. I don't watch football.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the difference that you faced in making a feature documentary as opposed to one of your movies?
Yeah, it's way more work, just in general, right? Because, you can, especially on an indie feature film where, money doesn't go very far, your schedule. I mean, on the low end, like where I work, like we shoot a week or 2 weeks and we're done, right? And I'm a very visual director when it comes to narrative, so I don't overshoot. I shoot exactly what I want, and I know how it's going to come together, and I can literally have a first cut of the film in like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll work on it for like another week, and like that's it, it's done, yay! And then you send it off to color and sound, and you get someone to write a score for it, and in a narrative score, there's not that many music cues, and so it can be done pretty quickly. With a documentary, the story unfolds as you talk to people, and you pre-interview people if you're smart, so that I spent probably, we interviewed Joe for 9 hours. I bet you I spent 12 hours over Zoom, literally like taking transcripts as he was talking, so that I could like absorb the information, and then you end up with this like literally Word document that's like 100 pages long that's searchable. So it's like, I need to find every time Joe talked about Moby. Okay, it's there, and so it's kind of like writing a nonfiction book in a way. And in so much, too, as like, if you're writing nonfiction, you often just don't know where it's going to end, and with the documentary, you're almost, several things developed while we were filming. Like, Joe decided that he wanted to move off to California, and his decision to do that, which you'll see in the film, is driven a lot by the things he experienced coming up through that scene, and the experience of the loss of the Swiss Avenue, because he did DJ for a bit at It'll Do, and so that became like a new development. We're like, okay, like we were like, some of this we're covering like a historical documentary, and suddenly we're covering this like a current events documentary, because things are happening now.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I hate that, things, developed. Let me re-say that. Like, it's unfortunate that things change, right? Because we were prepared, maybe even for the building to not be there anymore. But when they happened, it's exciting because it's like a twist in the story, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, Joe, is now like pursuing, taking over California in Los Angeles, and he's composing music for films and stuff like that. So that actually ended up being a great thing. But at the time, it was just like, holy shit, Joe's going. What does this mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other difficult thing I think was the editing is very difficult, because you have so much footage. And then once we finally reached a good cut of the film, from the beginning, I had this idea that Joe Virus would compose the title soundtrack and the ending credits soundtrack, and maybe one or two things in the middle. And then we were going to get like stock music for everything else. Because in a documentary, you can end up with literally like hundreds of music cues. Like go watch a documentary, look away, and just listen to the music, and you'll realize that sometimes every 30 seconds the music changes because the tone shifts or the subject shifts, and every time it's a new track.
Yeah.
And that's an ungodly thing to ask of a single composer. Like, that's just a monument of work. And so I didn't want to do that to Joe. And when we finally got around to, I was like, okay, like, you got 3 songs you can work on. This will be great. And he was like, I really want to do the whole thing. I was like, really? Okay. And so he spent 6 months, literally, I think in the end, it was like almost 100 different songs, spanning every electronic genre you could possibly imagine, from disco to, house to, like 2000s EDM, to every genre of goth you could possibly imagine. And that was so difficult, just from the amount of work. And I think the film shines in a way it never would have if I had said, no, Joe, it's fine, don't worry about it. Saying yes to his, like, please let me make the soundtrack, was probably one of the best decisions we made. Because no one else was there, right? Like, even if I found another composer, right, they weren't there at Start Club. They weren't there at the Empire Club in 1988. They weren't there at the Lizard Lounge in 1993 when Moby was, huge. So his musical knowledge and just ability to just create those sounds was so important, I think.
Not only his musical knowledge, his just being there.
Just his experience, like the vibe, because music is like more than genre, right?
Do you think if you would have got someone else, it might have sounded a bit stock?
Totally.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have. It's just, it would have been kind of fake, honestly.
Well, that's great, man. That's great that you wanted that, but you didn't want to put that on him. And then he said, no, please put that on me.
Honestly, he was a little hurt. He was like, I think there's a miscommunication, and like, he thought that he was going to do the whole thing, and that's not what I had intended. And then he was like, no, I have to, because this is his life, man. Like, for all the people that went there, this was like the most important years of their life, and so for him to create the soundtrack, I kind of felt like it was something he felt like it was something he had to do. He owed it to everybody to do it. And so it's incredible. So we have the film premiere coming up, April 28th at Dallas International Film Festival. And then I hope to have more film festivals across the US coming in the next, 6 to 10 months. And then once the film is out, and has distribution and streaming, we're going to release a download of the soundtrack. I think Joe's going to be putting it on his, not SoundCloud, the other service.
Bandcamp.
Yeah, Bandcamp. Yeah, he's going to put it on his Bandcamp for sale. And he's going to get the complete proceeds of this soundtrack. That will go to Joe, not us. Yeah. And it's great. He took those 90 tracks and combined them into almost like anthems. He's got these songs where it's like 4 or 5 tracks that he's strung together to create these anthems that are just mind blowing. I really can't wait for everybody to hear the music without interviews over it, because there's as much going on in that as there is in the film. Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
So you have the premiere coming up the 28th, Dallas International Film Festival. Are you currently trying to get into other film festivals, or have you been accepted? And are you also going to privately screen it anywhere?
No private screenings for now. I'm not saying we won't do that eventually, but at the moment we're waiting on some 15 or 20 film festivals that we've submitted to, but we haven't heard, if we've been accepted or not. I expect some, like it's kind of like throwing darts at a wall, right? Yeah. And you throw 20 darts and hope that 4 of them stick, and you get 4 screenings, because film festivals these days literally they have a slate of 10 feature films they want to show, and they'll get 2,000 submissions for those 10 that they'll show. So it's a tough game. So you shoot wide like a shotgun and hope that some of them hit, right? So nothing on the calendar yet, but I expect more coming up, certainly. And we've submitted to stuff all over the US. So my hope is that, it will not be just here in Texas, that there will be some stuff on the East and West Coast as well.
Okay. And like your other movies, I see them, they're streaming on Apple TV and so forth.
I mean, anywhere you would
available
want it.
there.
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, certainly, right? Like distribution these days means that you're on Amazon, you're on Apple, you're on Google Play, you're on Tubi, you're everywhere. Pretty much, except Netflix, because Netflix doesn't want any real indie films anymore, unfortunately. I mean,
they just want Kevin Hart movies, Timothy.
I guess, I don't know. They just make their own. They make their own shit now, and it's all kind of cookie cutter. And back in the day, like when I first started going to film school, I knew people that got their stuff on Netflix because Netflix wanted just everything, just whatever. And for a time, Amazon was like that, and now it's even less accepting of independent projects. But we certainly will be streaming on Amazon. That's often the best and easiest place to go get it. You can rent it or buy it on Amazon. So we're talking to distributors right now, and then I'm going to let some of the film festival stuff play out, and then we'll ultimately sign with one of them. And then it'll be just they'll put us on their slate, and they'll figure out when it makes sense for them to release the film. But I expect before the end of the year, definitely.
Okay. I'm always happy when I see someone from my hometown doing something really cool. You've done the documentary, you're getting ready for the film festival.
Yeah.
Are you already working on your next project?
Well, we have another film that we shot in 2020 that has been, I think, as hard in some ways to like finalize as Dark Sanctuary. I produced it. It's called Dead Hand, and it is on our IMDb, so you can check that out. It's written and directed, stars, and all the fight choreography is done by my co-founder of Spectrograph Films, John Francis McCullough. And it's kind of like it's a really old school like action comedy with just like killer martial arts and great tense action scenes with lots of wit in between. I liken to it like the heyday of like action comedy in the 80s. It's a modern film, but it has that flavor to it. So we just signed distribution, and I don't want to say any more, but we delivered the film, and they will imminently be putting that out. So that's something to look out for, is the release of Dead Hand. And then I always have, just tons of scripts. Oh, you can't see it. Let's see. It's doing weird stuff. So I always have tons of scripts that I'm working on. It's just a question of getting funding and that sort of thing. Ultimately my love is horror. And so, I think the next project I'll be working on is more than likely going to be like a narrative horror film of some sort.
Yeah. Eddie, what is your favorite horror movie?
That's that should be a hard question, but I'm in love with Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay.
By Francis Ford Coppola. It's almost more of a gothic drama in a lot of ways, but it's got strong elements of horror, and I don't know, man. I just give me a tall glass of absinthe in a dark room, and I'll sit back and watch that movie, and it's my jam, man.
So you're more of a horror movie and not a gore movie fan.
Some of my favorite films really go towards like the supernatural and the occult. In fact, like an idea I'm working on right now is really steeped in like ritual magic. And you often see, I think most of the time in films you see like magic is like, okay, let's draw a bloody pentagram on the ground, we'll light a bunch of candles, and this big spooky demon comes out and rips people to shreds, like Hellraiser sort of stuff. And that's all based on real things, and it's way scarier in how it's actually done, in the effects that it produces, if you choose to believe that that's possible. Even if it's not possible, the idea that it could be possible is super spooky. And so I'm interested in that sort of thing when it comes to narrative is, the supernatural phenomena, the question of if it were real, what would it be like? And I think far more often it's way scarier than how Hollywood tends to portray it, because you need, for whatever reason, the formula is blood and guts and, scantily clad girls running away from, monsters and whatever. That's fun. That's okay. I like Sleepaway Camp. I think that's a, cheesy, fun movie, but I don't want to make that kind of movie, right?
No, Sleepaway Camp is a classic.
I want to make a film that when you're done watching, you go to bed and you turn out the light and you start thinking about it, and before you know it, you spend all night running over these things in your head and going, "Holy shit, is this real? It could be real. What if it is real? My world is not what I thought it was."
Yeah.
Or
I can relate to that. I like to watch a movie that when I'm done with it, turn out the light, and before I know it, the light's back on.
Right.
And there's cartoons on the TV.
Movies like The Witch, or the Hereditary, or two incredible films. There's one an Irish film called A Dark Song that I'm telling you, man, I saw A Dark Song, and I'm still thinking about it. That movie haunts me in a way that, like, and it's not, there's like no blood really, there's, I don't think anyone dies actually. It's just like one person dies in that film, no spoilers, but it just sits with you in a way that just makes you go like, shit, like if even a fraction of this could possibly be real, like reality is not what it seems. And we even, taking it back to Dark Sanctuary, we dedicate a whole section of the movie to hauntings. Because I'm open about the fact that I'm very interested and I believe in a lot of supernatural phenomena, or at least the possibility of it. And infamously, 2424 Swiss, it was a very haunted location, and we covered several stories, people talking about their experiences, and we even captured something strange while interviewing within the derelict interior of Swiss Avenue, which you'll see in the film if you want to go whenever you watch it. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Oh man, well, I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Like I said, when I saw the article, I immediately you weren't hard to find, but I immediately sought you out and really
awesome. Well,
wanted to talk to you about it. Where can people find out about the film online and your other films?
Absolutely. So, Instagram is a great place. Facebook sucks because they really limit the reach of everything you put out. But really the best thing to do would be go to darksanctuarythemovie.com. From there, we have links to all of our social media, like on the top and bottom rail. It's got a screening schedule calendar, kind of like bands do for tours. It's got a trailer. It's got like a summary of the film. And then additionally, you can go to Spectrograph Films. And I didn't .com. I didn't think about how difficult it is to spell spectrograph whenever we chose that name, but Spectrograph Films, Spectrograph. And that's really our catch-all website. So it's got my first film, The Ghost Lights, which is like a sci-fi horror drama. It's got info about Dead Hand, and we'll have info about Dead Hand as we release it. We have a shop where you can buy some stuff. And then also a link off to Dark Sanctuary as well. And, both those, we have social media for both Dark Sanctuary and Spectrograph on mostly Facebook and Instagram. But I would say go to Instagram because that's, you're more likely to see stuff there, I think, than you would anywhere else. Yeah.
I saw in one of your films you worked with Billy Blair. How was it working with that legend?
Oh man, incredible, right? Like, so my first feature film we shot in 2020, and it's called The Ghost Lights, and it's based on the phenomena of the Marfa lights out in far west Texas, a real thing. And this was based around the idea of like if someone had a close encounter with these things, what would happen? And so Billy, who you might recognize from both Machete films, Sin City, A Dame to Kill, he was in. Really anything Robert Rodriguez touches, Billy Blair is in. And he's a great actor in his own right. He plays a lot of like villains in Rodriguez stuff. But, I met Billy years ago at the church. So it all comes back to the church, right? Like this is, it's crazy. But I was there one night, and I'm wearing, when I go to the club, I do like gothic Victorian with top hats and stuff. And I walk in, and there's another dude wearing a top hat who looks like Edgar Allan Poe. And I look over there, and I just go up and say, "Hey, what's up, man?" And we just start talking. And then he's like, "Hey, what do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to film school, and I'm making some short films." He goes, "Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm in some movies." And then he tells me his name. And then like later I go like, "Oh, he means he's really in some movies." Right. And but at the time, I ran into him again, and I remember asking him long time ago, if someone like, what would be your dream role? Like, what do you want to be in that you're just not getting those parts? And he's like, "Well, I want something that's, I can really like sink my teeth into, that has some depth of character." And as soon as I wrote the character Mario in The Ghost Lights, who's this traumatized Hispanic miner living out in Terlingua in this ghost town in West Texas, who's had this close encounter with the lights, this haunted individual, the first person I thought of was Billy. And I reached out to him, not expecting him to say yes. And he was like, "Yeah, dude, let's go." It's 2020. None of us were getting work. Like it was, maybe we lucked out, possibly. He didn't have anything else going on. And he came in and just like dropped poetry. And I mean, like we have some very poetic monologues for him in the film that I was kind of worried about because it just had so much. It was just a lot of text. And he just came in and just threw it down, and I was like, there's sometimes I was watching it on camera, and we shot it in this kind of quasi-documentary style for his scenes in particular. And you started to feel like you were just doing an interview, not, filming a narrative film.
Yeah.
Because the reality that he brought to those lines was really incredible. And, you don't often get to see that in some of his films. Like in Machete, he's like wielding automatic weapons, and he's just kind of a goofy character, right? Yeah. He's good at that, but he's also great at playing drama, and that was a really cool experience.
Right on, man. Yeah, I've known Billy for over 30 years.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. He's a great guy. He's so cool.
Good
And, I said he looks like Edgar Allan Poe. He's actually a descendant of Edgar Allan Poe.
Really?
He is. Yeah. And I think some of his like handsome swarthiness kind of comes from the DNA that he probably got from Poe. Like there's some side by side stuff, that you can put them together and be like, okay, like I see it.
I see it. I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, ask him. He's more than happy to talk about his connection with Poe,
Right on, man. Well, Timothy, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for doing this on such short notice. And dude, I wish you the best of luck with this. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Everybody check out Dark Sanctuary, the story of the church. And if you're not into goth stuff, I think you will be afterwards.
Yeah.
So check it out.
I have one more question.
You got it.
Our podcast is called Is Breakfast Included? If we were having breakfast, what would you have?
Gotcha. Black coffee. Always. I don't want to ruin good coffee with cream or sugar. And man, if I could have my choice, it would be like eggs Benedict. I think I really like with like avocado. Is really nice. So yeah, there you go.
Cool.
Poached eggs. I love poached eggs in hollandaise. Good stuff.
Well, you're premiering Dark Sanctuary the 28th Dallas International Film Festival, man. We'll promote it for you.
Excellent. Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, brother. Well, it's good talking to you.
Absolutely.
Right on. Timothy Stevens. It was a lot of fun talking to him. I didn't know Timothy. I just kind of cold called him about this when I heard about this documentary. He was very, very open to doing this interview. And I wish him nothing but luck because for a lot of people, this place meant everything. They were so accepting of no matter who you were, you went in there and you were yourself. You can find out more about the movie at spectrographfilms.com. Check them out. Also, check out toneshopguitars.com. Like I said, use the code BREAKFAST15 for 15% off your first order. And hell, while you're online, go to isbreakfast.com and check out what we got going on. I mean, we got some pretty cool stuff going on too. Yeah, we're hip. All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.